G'day, and welcome to another episode of Tartarian Truthers with your hosts, Casey.
Hey, everyone.
And JoJo. And in today's episode, we're looking at comparisons, where we'll be examining some of Australia's incredible architecture and compare it to some architecture from around the world. So, Casey, have you ever walked through a big city and wondered why the old structures look so similar to those we've seen across our realm? There's like government designated offices and buildings with the same architectural designs and features, churches with such intricacies and detail.
Yeah, I sure have, JoJo. All the first buildings in Australia are completely out of place. A lot of them look like they could be straight out of Europe, the US, or even Asia, some of them, which is so weird when you think about everything that we've discussed so far in our previous episodes, because we know that if we follow our official history narrative, we had a very small population that was spread pretty thinly over this huge continent. We had very basic materials to build with and had little to no local manufacturing capabilities until well into the mid 19th century. So, we're such a young nation, and to think we were able to pull off some of the most complex and exquisitely styled construction in those early days when we were all getting around in horse and carriages. I mean, it's quite unbelievable. So let's get started and take a look at some of these buildings, shall we? All right, so here we're looking at some typical clock towers you'll find in just about any town. So on the right, we have the Balmain Post Office, which was allegedly built in 1888 and was designed by architect James Barnett. It has operated as a courthouse and a police station, but is currently just being a regular old post office. Okay, so on the right here, we have the Bolton Town Hall located in Greater Manchester, UK, which was built between 1866 to 73 and is neoclassical style with a Baroque style clock tower. So what do you think, JoJo?
They're pretty similar, aren't they?
They really are. They're almost identical.
Wow. And so here on the right, we're looking at the US District Court in Connecticut. It's said to have started in 1912 and completed in 1919 and has housed the post office. It's considered classical revival style architecture and was spared from a planned demolition in the 1960s and instead renovated to continue its useful life.
Thank goodness. Imagine if they demolished that. Oh
Could you
my
imagine?
goodness. I would be devastated.
And it wasn't, until 2015 that they decided to add it to the National Register of Historic Places.
Good.
Glad.
Absolutely.
And then we have on the left there, we've got two images. And the reason we put the one on the bottom is it is identical to the one over there in Connecticut. If you look at those, the columns, those columns, they're just identical. So Custom House here is in Launceston, Tasmania. Now, everyone remembers how remote Tasmania is, right? Well, this beauty was built in 1885 by J&T Gunn. It features elegant portico and Corinthian columns. And this building once housed what was thought to be the most important of government functions and currently contains offices for customs and the border patrol protection. So, I love that they mentioned portico, which means the front of the building or like a porch or a walkway.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a popular style for these times and extremely unnecessary when you think about it. And this next image here is City Hall in Geelong, Victoria, and was first acquired by the council in 1854. But apparently a contest was held, and of 12 entries, architect Joseph Reed won.
Wow, JoJo, that's pretty impressive considering it was acquired by the council, yet Joseph Reed won a contest. I don't know, that kind of doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
But those first two look almost identical, really. And now check these ones out. They look just like the Customs House. So the first picture is the State Library of New South Wales, which was said to be built between 1905 and 1910. Now, if you have any family members that recall working on this building, or know anyone that has memories of these buildings being built, please let us know, because it's very hard to find any information on that. Anyway, apparently they needed a library so desperately upon first arrival, in the country back in those days when there was nothing, that some wealthy Sydney citizens started fundraising for it in 1826, just 38 years after our first settlement.
Amazing.
I call baloney. The British Museum, which is on the right, was established in 1753, again largely based on the collections of the Anglo-Irish scientist and physician Sir Hans Sloane, and first opened its doors to the public in 1759.
Interesting. And I love how our historians use words like established and acquired, don't you?
Yeah, it's interesting use of words, isn't it?
Very interesting use of words. And here we have two more buildings of the same or similar style. The Oriental Bank was located in Melbourne, but was one of the many demolished buildings beside the Yarra River. And it was built in 1856, in a time Melbourne was still finding its feet. They called it a Greek temple themed design. Unfortunately, the bank itself would go out of business in 1884 and was demolished shortly afterwards.
Oh my goodness, that's just ridiculous.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Really?
but why would you build something so extravagant and ginormous to be used as a bank, and then when the bank goes out of business, you just knock it down?
They couldn't repurpose this one, apparently. There was just there was just too many other buildings that looked the same.
Lies.
Lies. And then here we have the New York Courthouse, and it's in classical Roman style and was built between 1913 and 1927. Completion was delayed by World War One. And it seems unlikely to me that here we're trying to expose the ridiculousness of construction in Australia, but also uncovering some flaws in the historical narrative across the continents.
Yeah, I agree, JoJo. I think all of history is full of flaws and discrepancies, and we're doing our best to expose them to you in Tartarian Truthers. All right. So now look more at the next. Okay, yeah, this is the image that I was talking about. So look at these more Corinthian column buildings. So this time St. Peters Basilica, in Rome, built in the Renaissance style, located in Vatican City. It is said to have been built over the remains of St. Peter, and according to our history books, was started in 1506 and completed by 1626, when it was consecrated with many architects and designers over that period, so they say. Then we have the South Australian Parliament building, which was founded. So founded is another one of those words that the historians like to use, on the 22nd of April in 1857. But then there's also accounts that say that it wasn't completed until 1939. So due to financial constraints, the official narrative goes that the Parliament House was constructed in stages over 65 years. So, yeah, what do you think, JoJo?
That seems, a little bit more plausible, doesn't it?
It does.
But did you know it's actually called the Old Parliament House? And I don't blame it. It really looks like it could have commenced construction back when the St. Peters Basilica started in the 1600s.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Would not surprise me at all either. And this here is the State Library located in Victoria. And you can tell that the original structure is just so much older than that of anything else in its surroundings. And can you see the upgrade that they did just behind it?
It looks so different to the rest of the building. You can tell that it's much newer and modern. I think it actually ruins it.
It does. It really does. I mean, it takes away from the beauty of this old structure, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But if you remember too, JoJo, that this library, the State Library of Melbourne, looks exactly identical to the State Library of Sydney.
Right. It really does. It really does look the same.
So odd.
Okay, here we've got Flinders Street Station in Melbourne, which opened in 1854. And on the right there, we've got a structure from Pierre, South Dakota. And I just want to really draw your attention to the domes, you know.
Those domes are almost identical, aren't they?
They really
to the
are.
one in Dakota. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, so this image here is the amazing Garden Palace, which was located in Sydney. So it was a purpose-built exhibition building constructed to house the Sydney International Exhibition of 1879. So they
say an exhibition then, hey?
Yeah, it's important.
It was very important.
So they say that it was designed by James Barnett and constructed by John Young. Oh, I think they're just made up names, but anyway, because you're not going to believe it, JoJo, but this building was just smashed out in 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Said to be a reworking of London's Crystal Palace, but sadly, it was completely destroyed after being engulfed by fire in September of 1882. So, yeah, that's just ridiculous. And you know that when it was actually destroyed by fire, it housed a lot of the government's public records. So all of the convict records were destroyed. A lot of the Aboriginal artifacts from the time that were housed there were destroyed. So it's quite a convenient fire, really.
I say coincidence?
I
think not.
Nothing is a coincidence. Anyway, moving on. So on the right here, we have St. Paul's Cathedral in London. So the site for that was founded, once again, in 604 AD. So that's so old. In the Great Fire of London of 1666. Numbers, numerology, interesting. Old St. Paul's was gutted. And after the fire, it was first thought possible to retain a substantial part of the old cathedral. But ultimately, the entire structure was demolished in the early 1670s. So the task of designing a replacement structure was officially assigned to Sir Christopher Wren on the 30th of July, 1669. So the present-day cathedral was completed in 1708, and construction continued for several years after that, with the statues on the roof added in the 1720s. So yeah, it's got a long history, that building.
It does, yeah. So does that mean that the cathedral took nearly 50 years to be completed, if we follow and believe this actual narrative? And yet the building next to it was knocked out in 8 months?
Yeah, apparently.
And then taken out by fire? It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
It is. It's crazy.
So here we have 3 Art Deco style buildings. And you'll see there on the top left, we have the old Commonwealth Bank building, which was created, now there's that word again,
created.
in 1911 under the order of the Prime Minister at the time. So no official construction commencement date, which is kind of interesting. But what's also significant here is the Art Deco design style of the building, which to me seems to be what they call a building that doesn't really fit into any other time period. Now, if you grew up in Australia, you would have probably seen one of these.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I remember collecting Dollarmites, JoJo. I had one of these.
You had a Dollarmite account? Yeah. You had your little Commonwealth Bank of Australia money box?
Yeah, I think everyone did. It's how we got indoctrinated into the banking system.
Exactly. It sure is the way we got indoctrinated. That's it. And, you know, that's actually my original one from the 80s. Right there.
That's so cool.
And I'm going to check out, why don't we check out this commercial? So the Americans come out with the new product, or really just an upgrade of our iconic money box. Check it out.
Keeping with the bank's determination to evolve, we believe it's high time the Dollarmite got a facelift.
Kids are going to flip for this.
People kind of like the money box. It symbolizes security.
Casey. We appreciate your effort.
Probably leave the money box as is, though.
Yeah.
It's the first time that's happened.
Like the building, they love the original money box design. because it's just classic and iconic, like the building itself.
Yes. And was that a little insight there into the plight of humanity and AI in the future, maybe, JoJo?
Who knows?
Now, from Art Deco style to medieval castles, our architects were well versed in both styles, apparently. So this is the Government House in Sydney, and it's the official residence and office of Her Excellency, the Honourable Margaret Beazley, who is the 39th Governor of New South Wales. Now, as you may remember from one of our previous episodes, back in 1788, soon after British settlement, the first governor of the colony, Arthur Phillip, laid the foundations of Sydney's first Government House. But apparently after 50 years, it had become worn and dilapidated. So they decided to construct a new building, which is this one on the left.
This is a new building.
A giant castle.
Wow. Okay.
And it was built in 1839, JoJo.
And
So
look how similar it looks to that one in London, though.
exactly. It looks almost identical, but like 200 years older.
Older, yes. Agreed.
And so, as you may remember from previous episodes, we discussed what was around and what was available back in those times, 1839, which was not a lot. And looking at this painting, which was painted in 1846 by a Mr. George Edwards Peacock, this is taken from the outlook of the Botanical Gardens in Sydney. So we're looking across over at the Government House, which looks like a huge castle sitting up on the hill. And then we have Fort Macquarie down in the water there. So that is actually where the Opera House resides today, where that fort is down in the water. So a very interesting painting showing what Sydney Cove looked like back in, 1846.
Mid-1800s.
Yeah, and to think that, they had that kind of infrastructure already.
The abilities, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
There's just too many inconsistencies, though, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
From the old Government House to the new one, it seems to me that there were just a lot of redesignations of existing buildings, not the construction of new structures suitable for a specific need.
Yeah, I agree, JoJo. It's all very odd, and it doesn't add up. It really doesn't.
It doesn't. So the next few images we're going to look at are for you to guess. Play a little guessing game, shall we?
Yeah.
Australia or where else in the world? Where else? Let's go.
We'll even put on some thinking music for you.
Let's do it.
Wow. So how incredible was that, JoJo?
Oh my gosh, that was so amazing.
We
So
have,
similar.
yeah, we have some incredible architecture that is, some of it's almost identical to architecture in really far out and different places, like Ethiopia. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Ethiopia, Indonesia, Slovakia. It's crazy. But you'll notice that most of the larger structures around the world have had similar or same designations or simply assigned as a government building or a church, like you mentioned earlier, JoJo.
Mm.
And not one detail was ever left out. Every inch was thoughtfully planned with detail inside and out. Vaulted roofs, marble columns with bronze trim, with spiral fluting, large domes, exquisite window tracery. So you might be wondering where we're going with all this. Check out this quote from a Bloomberg article written in April of this year by a Zach Mortis. Now, he's actually attempting to debunk the theory that we're trying to prove. Listen to this.
Yep.
The overall premise is an alternative history, a vast, technologically advanced Tartarian empire emanating from North Central Asia or thereabouts, either influenced or built vast cities and infrastructure all over the world. Tartaria or Tartary, though never a coherent empire, was indeed a general term for North Central Asia. Either via a sudden cataclysm or a steady antagonistic decline, and perhaps as recently as 100 years ago, Tartaria fell. Its great buildings were buried and its history was erased. After this great reset, the few surviving examples of Tartarian architecture were falsely recast as the work of contemporary builders who could never have executed buildings of such grace and beauty, and subjected them to clumsy alterations.
Wow.
Yep.
That Zach there, he's bang on, isn't he?
That's right, mate. That's what we're trying to say.
Bang on. Okay, so Casey, do you think the same people who painted the raisin sign on that piece of wood are the same people that built that amazing structure that it's hanging off of?
Yeah, definitely not.
How crazy is that? And for us to believe it too, is
Embarrassing.
It's
They're ruining the
embarrassing.
building with their crappy
Oh,
sign.
so embarrassing. Okay.
Okay, all right. So this group, actually, we're at the end of the episode, JoJo. That just went so quick.
Oh my goodness.
We
That
just,
did just go so quick.
yeah. We
What
hope
happens when you're having fun, isn't
that's
it?
right. Time flies.
Time flies.
So we hope you enjoyed it, guys, and we hope that this may have perhaps piqued your interest in what could possibly be an alternative history. Is there more to history than what we've been told? I think so. And on that note, we will leave you with one last slideshow of some of the incredible architecture that supposedly popped up all over Australia in the same time period. By who and by what means, we have no idea. We'll leave that up to you to have a think about. So we'll see you next time for another excellent episode of Tartarian Truthers, where we'll be delving a little deeper into our amazing churches and cathedrals, won't we, JoJo?
Yes, we will. And if you like the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye, everyone.
Bye.